Oh, hey guys. So it's amazing to be here. It's an honor. It's really cool to speak in front of so many people. So today I'm going to be talking about three swear words: Meta ads, AI, and e-commerce in general. So I have a lot that I want to share, so I'm going to be really quickly. So apologies if I speak fast. But a little bit about me. So the reason why you should trust me. As the presenter mentioned, I myself spent around 30 million on Meta ads. Now I have an agency that spends around 50 million annually on Meta ads for our clients. And here's the proof. So far this year we spent 30 million. Q4 is here. We're going to be going guns blazing. So what I'm going to be speaking today about is going to be four main things. So where are we now? Media buying strategies, creative strategies, and then what's next? What's waiting for us in terms of Meta ads, e-commerce in the next 2 years. So let's start with this really interesting notion that I've heard in another Meta conference, right? So I think right now the market and the landscape is changing really much. And I think that a lot of people are still operating in their old ways. What I mean about that, so in the beginning, 10 years ago, if you remember, it was primarily all about getting the clicks. The cheapest CPCs, getting the clicks, Facebook likes, Facebook page likes, Instagram followers, it's all about that. Then it moved into optimizing for CPA, ROAS, profitability, and now I think that a lot of e-commerce owners are still operating in that old notion, while in reality we are in the wave number 3, which is maximizing for value. And what does it mean? It means that you have to, instead of thinking about return on investment, profitability, you have to be thinking about how can I get the best, highest value customer that is going to be spending more money after the first purchase. So it all becomes about lifetime value. And here's some statistics for you about Europe. So this year and next year, European brands are planning to spend less on Meta ads, which means that they're seeing something. They see the rise in the CPMs. They see the rise in the volatility, and here's the uncertainty index. As you can see, it has been rising consistently, and as marketers, we probably understand that, okay, if the uncertainty is rising, people are most likely going to be purchasing less because they're saving money, because they're uncertain about their future, right? And all this is happening at the same time while CPMs are rising. So sometimes it feels like, marketers, e-commerce owners, we're in the boxing match with Mike Tyson. We have no chance. And what kind of brands are losing in the moment, right? So brands that are really relying on the old model, the wave number 2, that are relying on the first sale and the first customer acquisition. And what do I mean by that? So let's say a brand that has 0 lifetime value, it means that they get the purchase, they acquire the customer, and that customer never buys from them again. So they're always reliant on Meta to always get that customer, which means that if Meta increases their prices, next month my business might go under, right? So we cannot no longer rely just simply on customer acquisition, and that is where the third wave of performance marketing comes in. The second is subpar customer experience brands. It becomes all about product right now, and brands that are not testing enough creative, just simply put it. And what kind of brands are winning? So the kind of brands that are winning, those are high LTV businesses. So when I'm saying LTV, I mean lifetime value. So the amount the customer spends with you during the lifetime of being with your business. So let's say I spend $100 to acquire a customer, and that customer spends $300 in 2 years. The problem is cash flow then, but that's another topic. So high retention businesses, SaaS, AI products, applications, quiz funnels, you've probably seen them working really well. And brands that really are successful. So let's say if you rely on customer acquisition, the only way you can really compete is testing high volumes of creative. And let me tell you an example. One Ukrainian brand, Quiz Funnel, I've heard that they're testing 400,000 creatives per year. I'm not saying you have to test that much, but this is the volume it takes to be at the top. And well, we have to change the way we look at ROAS, and we have to change the way we look at performance in general. So before it used to be like all about ROAS, CPA, CPC, or whatever. Now we have to be looking much more complex. Contribution margins, blended ROAS, even that, to be honest, is now a bit outdated, but it's all about contribution margin right now. This is the most important metric, so I definitely recommend you take a screenshot or a picture of that. And now let's talk about technical stuff, media buying strategy. So I put a meme here. Probably a lot of media buyers know that. So previously there used to be two ways, right? So the so-called virgin media buying style, and the chat style. So what does it mean? So the first one, it means that you go into the ad account, you press a lot of buttons, do a lot of settings, you choose what you want to target, and then another option was just to go broad, just like let the algorithm make decision. And there was always this notion, like media buyers fighting, should I let the algorithm make decisions? Should I manage the campaigns? And I think now generally, and there are some Meta representatives here, you can ask them themselves, Meta is generally moving into direction to take away the campaign management in order for you to focus only on creatives and creative production, because that is what they see from statistics and data, that this is making the highest impact. And that is the reason why we changed our campaign layout. So probably you remember back in the day, we used to have cold, warm, hot, or like top of the funnel, middle of the funnel type of campaigns. And you could segment traffic on the ads manager level, right? And that has changed completely after the iOS update 3 years ago, when we no longer could just simply track data and we had to rely on the algorithm, right? We just lost sight in that sense. And what happened is that we started using this structure. As you can see, it says layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4, but it doesn't say cold, middle of the funnel, or bottom of the funnel. And the reason is because now Meta does it for you. So basically, back in the day, you had to create separate campaigns and segment them. Now Meta does it all for you. And I really like one notion that Barry Hott said on LinkedIn, that you should start making funnel ads instead of making segmented ads. And what do I mean by that? A funnel ad is an ad that can convert any type of customer despite where they are in their journey of the funnel, right? That segmentation that we used to have is no longer working, where you had testimonial for somebody that engaged with your website, a discount for somebody who has purchased on your website. It's no longer working. What you need to do is you need to just think about generally how you can make funnel ads. And let's jump into some practical tips of media buying. There are three ways, so there are three things you can do in an ad account, right? So everybody that's in an ad account wants to scale, basically increase the ad spend, increase the profits, increase the orders, right? How you get there, there are three ways you can get there. Three stages that that take together. It's testing phase, iteration phase, and scaling phase, right? So testing phase, how you can test creative, and this is a bit technical. There are three ways how you can test creative: ABO, Advantage Shopping, and CBO. Nowadays, my recommendation is for most brands that are not spending a lot of money, I would just go with Advantage Shopping. And later I'm going to be talking a little bit about Andromeda change, so we're going to talk about that. But basically, Meta has changed how we test creative. Previously, we used to segment. Now my recommendation is to just go really broad and test like 20 creatives in Advantage Shopping. So that is testing phase. What happens after the testing phase is then you start to iterate. So you find something that works, a media buying strategy that works, and then you start to iterate, right? And the way you iterate, you start changing one variable at a time. So for example, you launch an Advantage Shopping campaign, you see that a certain country works or a certain cost cap works, then you can duplicate it and test another variable or upload another set of creatives. And lastly, there's a scaling phase, and there are three options how you can scale. Again, Advantage Shopping, CBO, or ABO campaigns. So I would probably suggest, I really love the notion of testing your testing method, so I would probably suggest test all of these scaling methods and see which one is working for you. But in my experience, what really works best now is CBO and Advantage Shopping. But the way we do it is usually we even start to set up lifetime budgets and cost caps. We really love to play with that. Basically, it's called an amplified scaling strategy. This is what Meta also recommends, where you set a lower cost cap and set a higher budget, meaning that the whole budget is not going to be spent, but you will get higher quality audiences. Now let's talk a little bit about the creatives, right? So there's a notion that you should be testing a lot of creative, and I know that in the beginning of this presentation I said so as well. But when you're testing a lot of creative, what you also have to start doing is you have to start tracking the right data, because just testing creative doesn't really mean anything, right? So one main KPI that we always track is the win rate. And a lot of people are actually asking me, so like what data should I be looking at? Hook rates, hold rates, engagement rates, click-through rates. I think the main metric for creative production and the success of your creative is the win rate. And you can have a look at the screenshot I put here. It's kind of in a meme form, but I think that today you have to go back to your teams and see how you're testing your creative and what is the success rate and what is the win rate, right? If it's below 10, it's terrible. Sorry, you have to revamp something. 35% is really good. And what I mean by these percentages, so simple, right? If you test 10 new creative concepts, at least 2 to 3 of those should be pretty successful. So then you need to adjust. You need to downscale how many creatives you test, or you need to increase the quality. And here are some, whoops, sorry, actually, you didn't see the slide, but yeah, how you can test creative, right? So there are 3 main ways how you can test creative, and that is my recommendation besides Advantage Shopping. So there's an old school way how you can test creative in ABO structures. So we still do it to this day with this brand, but I would recommend using this method only for brands that can spend a little bit more money because it is more costly. So ABO ad set, generally you can go with broad and you put 4 creatives in an ad set. 1 concept times 4 variations. And when I say a concept, I mean an angle or basically a general messaging. So for example, you're selling a pet supplement, so pet supplement for, I don't know, like a Christmas gift for dogs, right? And then that is a concept, and you times 4 that concept with variations of 1 variable, like a hook or a different actor or something like that. Another way you can do is a CBO method. This is not my favorite method, but I had to put it in here because it's the cheapest way to do it. So CBO, basically, what's the difference between ABO and CBO, right? So ABO method is to force the ad spend on an ad set, while CBO, you tell basically the ads manager, the Meta, to pick the best performing ad set and allocate the budget accordingly, right? So then you kind of trust Meta's algorithm, and then it really depends, like, do you really trust it, and how much data do you really have at your disposal? Is your pixel seasoned? Like, do you have a lot of data, a lot of purchases coming in that you want to trust the algorithm or not? But then again, the best creative testing method for most people, I think, nowadays, and we just generally use that with other AI automations, is Advantage plus sales campaigns with 20 creatives. So you can see, like, we moved from testing 4 creatives in an ad set to testing 20. So it's a big difference that really was made. So what are a couple of principles that I just really wanted to put out there, because I get this question asked a lot. What are the principles? When do you kill an ad? When do you think that you know that an ad is successful? So always recommend spending at least 1x CPA on your creative. 1x CPA, if you don't know what that means, is basically either your average cost per purchase in the last 7 or 14 days, or if you don't know what is your cost per purchase, then what you can do is you can look at your average order value of the store. So like, if your product costs 50 euros on average, then you should spend 50 euros on a single creative until you kill it, until you validate it. And also another thing I really preach, and I tell my team as well, is that you should not be attached to your creative that you make. You know, test fast and kill even faster. Sometimes we don't even wait for 1x CPA or average order value. Sometimes we even kill creatives at 1x the checkout. So like, we spend $10 and we kill it if we see that the click like CPCs are really high. And here are metrics in order of importance, in my opinion. And to be honest, well, the number 1 metric we always look at is ROAS, right? At the end of the day, it's all about profitability. And actually, it's interesting because I have some clients come to me and they're like, hey, you know, ROAS is low, but I see the CTR is good. CTR is 5%, but I'm like, then I start asking the questions, so like, do you want the CTR to be high, or you want your business to be profitable? And sometimes my recommendation for creative people here as well, and marketers, don't get hung up in the CTR, CPC game. Optimize for the end result. And usually for most businesses, the end result is profitability, and profitability equals lower CPA or higher ROAS. Other metrics, and I call them storytelling or contextual metrics. So if I'm a media buyer, right, and I see that ROAS is low, I need to go and look at other metrics to make sure that I can explain to the client what is happening. Sometimes as media buyers, you know, we're fighting the windmills. We don't know what's happening in reality, but we still have to find a reason what's happening. So CPC and CTR, in my opinion, is the second most important thing. CPM, frequency, average order value, conversion rate, and then lastly, the creative metrics, right? And it depends on what context you look at them. It's also important that when you analyze these metrics, you have to look in proportion to them. For example, if you look at CPC and CPC is €5, it doesn't tell you anything. But if you look at CPC and CPM, then it starts to tell you the story. So for example, real case, CPM has been going down, meaning that the advertising cost has been going down, and the CPC is also going down. So in reality, it could mean multiple things, but in my opinion, from my experience, it could also mean that we started targeting lower quality traffic, or some country targeting has changed. So as you can see, you can tell a story from these metrics. And before I dive into really practical ways how you can increase your win rate, I just wanted to also preach this method that we use. Use like an internal ecosystem of repurposing your creatives and your content. So what I mean is that when you make an ad, don't just make it and forget it. Think about, okay, how can I make the most out of the learnings that I have? How can I really scale it? So the way we do it in the agency, it's simple. So if we have a client, well, let's say maybe more of a bigger client that we want to test a lot of different approaches, messaging and angle, we do that with static ads, with static creatives, because it is much easier to make a static creative than to make a video ad, because you need, well, AI generated UGC, all of these things, right? So we make a static creative, we test an angle, and if we see that this angle works with static creative, then we turn it into a video creative. And if the video creative is also successful, then we transcribe it with AI tools and we turn it into an advertorial. This actually proved really successful for one of the brands in Europe that we were running in Italy and other countries in European markets. So always repurpose your content into other pieces. So let's dive into 5 ways. My opinion, these are the 5 most significant ways that you can increase the win rate. Number 1 being iterate with creative formats. And what do I mean by that? So as you can see in the screenshot, you see a lot of different formats here, like testimonial, before and after, etc., right? So my recommendation, if you have a working ad, the way you can iterate, for example, you have a testimonial that is really working well for you. Turn the testimonial into before and after. Turn the testimonial into a simple headline. Turn it into an article creative. So this is a really good way just to go into your ads manager, look at your overall marketing and say, okay, this is working for us, how we can repurpose it and make it a little bit different and scale it. Second way, I think this is really also a game changer, focus on cumulative attention. So everybody probably knows what a hook means, right? The hook is basically first 3 seconds of the video, right? But it's not even, that hook is really important. It's important to cumulatively tackle the attention, because we are, well, a lot of people that we are selling to are Gen Z. We lack, we have a shortage of attention, meaning that we have to divide the hook. So we no longer can just use a 3-second hook. We have to divide the 3 seconds into 1-second intervals, because otherwise people will be dropping. And if you increase the hook rate, even if you do this one thing tomorrow when you test your creative, right? I guarantee you your hook rate is going to increase. And if you increase your hook rate, it means your CPC is going to go down, CPM is going to go down, and your business is going to be more profitable, potentially. Another thing that's really cool is editing techniques, right? So you can go to your video editor and say, okay, there's the video. There are some captions there. Maybe we can change the editing technique. And there are a lot of ways how you can, there are a lot of ways how you can do it. I'm not a video editor, so maybe video editors could tell me better, but, slow-mo, transitions, so like those TikTok transitions where, for example, you have a hand, you put it on a camera, and there's a transition to another location. So all of these things that you can use to iterate your creative without changing anything. You can keep the same creative, just change one thing, interrupt the pattern, and it helps you to reduce the creative fatigue. Another way, and I see a lot of brands being lazy on this, is iterate your scripts, right? So for example, right, you have one content creator that is working really well for your business. So 2 things you can do. One thing is you can take the script of this content creator and distribute the same script to like another 10 content creators and see like if other content creators work with the same script. Or what you can do is you can give the same content creator 10 other scripts and just utilize and iterate the content through the content creator. So you don't necessarily have to iterate the creative itself. You can keep the script the same and you can change the actor or you can change the script for the actor. I think this is really a game changer, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass because it takes time. You have to build connections with content creators. That is why I see a lot of brands are missing on this. And another thing that I think is really important but is often getting overlooked at. So in the beginning, when you don't test a lot of creative, it's not as important. But when you start testing, let's say, 100 creatives per week, right? The problem becomes analysis. And I hear this from a lot of brands, right? What they do is they test a lot of creative, and at the end of the week, they don't really know what are the learnings. So, okay, we tested 100 creative, so what about it? So what comes out of it? And naming conventions really help to analyze that creative. And we use other AI tools, for example, now, well, everybody knows maybe Motion, but Motion is a bit expensive, in my opinion. So what we now use is Atria, is a pretty cool tool. And there are some other tools that, are emerging there as well. So my recommendation, work on your naming conventions. And for example, this naming convention that we have here maybe looks a little bit like a rocket science code or something. Well, what you can do is you can create a spreadsheet where you decode these things, and then your media buyer and creative strategist knows like what creative it is. For example, so an example I can give you is, so as you can see, image, Bible, this one is the name of the product, English, the format, and all of these things. And also you can go deeper in there, and I see brands having like long names, and you can include stuff like what is the body of the creative, and what is the actor, for example, that is in there. So yeah, that's about the creative, and let's talk a little bit about what's next. So obviously Q4 is here, Black Friday, the most important time of the year, right? And I was just diving deep into stats, and I was just trying to see, is this Black Friday going to be better than last? And I talked with another guy yesterday, and I think that every single Black Friday is a wild box. You really never know how it's going to go until you actually hit the bell. But generally, what's happening right now in the market? 86% of people across the board are cutting on spending, meaning that 86% of people are trying to save money. And when people are trying to save money, generally it's not a good thing for us marketers, media buyers, because what it means that overall people will be more cautious about purchasing the product. And at the same time, we have a rising CPM problem, and we have a lowering pool of audience that can afford your products. So that's a problem, because competition will increase, it will be difficult. And another interesting stat that 46% are struggling to meet monthly outgoings. I think this statistic comes from the United States, but it's for brands that are advertising here. I think it's really important to know that a lot of people are struggling in the US, and I think it's going to be, especially in Q4, one thing you can do, I think, is going to be really heavy on discounting and discounts. Yeah, and what's happening next? Well, my slides are really random there, but Meta is becoming a luxury overall. The problem with Meta is rising CPMs, rising competition. Media buying is becoming more easier, meaning that overall media buying is becoming more accessible. Anybody can do it. Back in the day, it was much more difficult, but it's becoming more about the creative. LTV-based brands will continue to dominate. So for example, now everybody knows from Lithuania Kilo Health, right? So for example, a regular Kilo Health product, either if it's an info product or a physical product, generally they rely on LTV because they sell a subscription, which means that, for example, if you have a product, similar product, and you don't have cash in your bank account, what can Kilo come is they can come and run ads at 0.6 ROI while you have to achieve 1x ROI, and they're just going to bully you out of the market. And that is the power of LTV, because you can run at lower ROAS. And AI is changing how we shop in general, so ChatGPT is becoming a new search engine. Really interesting statistics as well. So for example, 80% of searches on Google don't end up in a click, meaning that 80% of people that actually type into Google don't click anymore. So they just search, and now there's Google AI. You've probably seen it, right? There's Google AI that generates an answer. It gives you an answer, and then you go into ChatGPT to talk about the answer. So this is also a game changer for everybody. And I think the last thing is that it's going to become a product-led marketing. It's going to be all about creative, how you can position your product, packaging, and in general, just having a good product. Because another interesting thing that Meta has introduced, and actually I don't think they even rolled out publicly yet, but this is a secret for you. In the backend, when somebody purchases your product, Meta now sends a questionnaire after 30 days of a person buying a product. And they ask, did you like the product? How was the delivery? Is it satisfactory? So for now, I don't think it's impacting the algorithm, but at some point it will. Meaning that in brands that have a bad product, that the customer support sucks, they're going to be struggling because now it's going to start affecting their CPMs even more. So that's about it. This is my LinkedIn. If you want, you can connect with me, and I will. If you want the slides, I can send it over. Feel free to message me and ask any question. Thank you for your attention, guys.
Wow, amazing, amazing presentation. Thank you, David, for all of your insights. We have many questions.
Okay.
And the first one that's been voted the most is, what is the minimum daily budget that is needed to start seeing measurable, reasonable results in today's European market?
Yeah.
European.
That's a very good question. I always recommend at least 300 euros daily ad spend, and the reason why is because if you're going to be spending less than that, you're just going to be really slow, and you're not going to get significant results fast. Yeah.
So 10,000 euros per month. This is what you need to start.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good start. Yeah.
Okay. Are you talking mainly about EU markets when you are providing our examples, or does it apply to USA market mainly?
I think it actually on the opposite. I think it generally applies mostly to USA market, but I think that what works in the USA market also works in European, but not the other way around sometimes. So if you make it work in Europe, making it work in USA is going to be more difficult. But if you make it work in USA, making it work in Europe is going to be easier.
Can you give us a couple of third-party tools to check, track, metric data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we use Triple Whale most of the time because it's easy integration. We are partners with Triple Whale, but there are other tools like, for example, I know there's even a stand here called RedTrack. We used to use RedTrack as well back in the day. Hyros. I think those are the Nordbeam as well. I personally would recommend using Triple Whale. I'm a fan of it. So.
If we talk about creative optimization, do you do everything manually, or do you use some kind of tools to upload stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think this is where the market is changing, because a lot of big brands actually manage to automate 80% of the activities you do in the ad account. So like all of the optimization is done by AI, basically, by rules and done live on an hourly basis. We still manage it mostly manually, but we are implementing AI tools to help that. And I think in the next 2 years, it's just going to be mostly about AI managing ads for you and us just being the creative people.
And can you also use some kind of payment data if the data is stored to help assist your targeting? For example, not just like your age group, but for some kind of payment method and something like that.
So I guess what you're saying is like, can we use our purchaser data to somehow help the algorithm, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so I think the best way to do that is using custom audiences. But another thing you can do is now, what Meta rolled out is you can create extensive lifetime value models within your company, and you can fill that lifetime value data back to Meta, and it can actually predict lifetime value on the customer. So this is what I said, the third wave of performance marketing, optimizing for LTV, and you can actually now do that by feeding that data.
And one last question. So what are the best performing ad format tips for static ads in Lithuania?
For static ads, I say the best performing one is going to be with a lot of text, surprisingly. I think that, well, generally, if an audience is older, static ads with a lot of text will work better. If it's Gen Z or younger audience, then less text. But generally, I noticed that testimonial ads are always evergreen. So like a picture of a person, a headline, and then some sort of small story. This is like an evergreen format that always works in all markets.
Somebody has told me once that the uglier the better. Does this apply in your case as well?
I'd say so, generally. I think that if the audience is older, uglier ads work because they're just used to different interfaces. For younger generation, for example, Gen Z or even younger, the way they're behaving, their purchasing cycle is so different. Like the way they behave on TikTok is really different. So the creative also has to be nice and congruent with the platform. So if you advertise on TikTok, your landing page and creative has to look like TikTok, basically.
Awesome. Thank you, David, for all of your insights and sharing.
Thank you.
5 minutes break, and we come back.